Good afternoon. Welcome to another vintage motorcycle show by Vintage Cycle 316. It's a beautiful fall day here in Xenia, Ohio. Today we've got a 1977 Honda GL1000 Goldwing. It's one of the original first generation Goldwings. Some people refer to them as the naked wings. It's back before Honda realized they wanted to make touring bikes out of them, and they started putting all the fairings and everything. So 77, so this is the third model year, 1975 being the first, and then 75, 76, and 77 were this same basic body style, and then they GL1000 in 78 and 79, a little bit different styling. And then in 80 they went to the 1100 bike. So the first gen Goldwings are kind of the more collectible ones. And this is one we just finished up here at Williams Vintage Cycle, so I thought we'd show it off. When this one came to us, it was the typical 1970s Vetter abomination. It had the big Vetter fairing on it. It had the full package. It had the front fairing, it had the lowers, it had the king queen seat, and the big sissy bar with luggage rack and hard bags, and everything you could ever want back in 1977 to tour with. But so of course we immediately took all that stuff off of it and threw it in the garbage. So of course, the problem with those, it's kind of a good and bad thing. Having all that on there, the fairing and everything, it kind of protects the paint and protects all the chrome on the front end. But if you've ever pulled one of those fairings off, the first thing you do was, or if you went back when they installed them, you took the stock headlight and headlight ears and front signals and all that, and everybody threw them in a box and put them up in their attic, and then over the course of 30, 40 years, they lost them. So now when you get one of these and you take the fairing off and you got to source all that stuff, some of that's getting pretty tough to locate. Same thing with the seats on these. Everybody put the king queen seat on. It's hard to find a used GL1000 without a big old king queen seat on it, so the original seats are getting pretty tough to locate. Speaking of the seats, the 75, and that's one of the few changes they did in 77. The 75, 76 ones had a flat seat on them, and the 77 year had this kind of a stepped seat on them. So one of the other changes they did in 77 was they went to a taller handlebars for the American market. A lot of people will see the 77s and think, oh, those are the wrong bars, that's not original. Well, it actually is. 75 and 6 had shorter bars, but 77 they went to the taller bars like this. So. And of course they changed the colors through the years. 75 had the red, the real popular reds and blues. 76, I know they came out with a yellow one that you don't see many of, and there was a blue one, and I think maybe there was a red one as well. And then 77 there was a red, maybe a blue, and then the black. I'm not sure what all her colors were, but I think the black and the red are probably my two favorite colors. Although the yellow one's kind of neat since it's rare. But so what we've done to this bike, other than I just said, where we removed all that stuff. Of course, we had to source a headlight and headlight ears, and each individual component. Some of these are getting really tough to locate. Like these little tiny bolts here that the turn signals clamp onto to screw into your fork ears. Those things are tough to find. Turn signals are easy. These are reproduced by I think it's K&L or K&S, one of those. So these are brand new. These little reflectors with their little proper rubber pieces are real tough to find. You can find every Japanese bike back in the 70s had reflectors, but not this dish style with the little rubber piece. So getting those correct can be tough. Luckily we had a good front fender. This is the one that came on the bike. GL1000s are kind of interesting because they had the little flare at the bottom. GL1000s, and then they use that, I believe it was pretty much the same fender on the Honda Matics. But those can be tough to locate if you don't have them. The seat, like I said, it had the king queen seat, so we located a used seat on eBay, and of course the cover was no good when we got it, so that is a new reproduction cover in the original style that they would have had in '77. It's all original paint. Looks really good. I mean, there are a few little blemishes, or shows his age. Like that's probably one of the worst. Down here at the bottom, there's a little scratch. Haven't decided yet if this bike is gonna be for sale, or if I kind of like it. So I've always liked the GL1000s and worked on a bunch and restored several through the years, but I've never kept one for myself. So I may sell it or may keep it. We haven't decided just yet. So I got to ride it a little bit more. Just came back from a ride here just a little bit ago. Went on about an 8.5 mile ride out on the country roads. So runs out real well. Rides nice. Oh, if you're not familiar with the Vintage Japanese Motorcycle Club, you got to check them out. Great organization. I've been a member of that for years. They put out a nice monthly magazine. They do the local chapters do little get-togethers and rides, and there's a couple of bigger shows through the years. They do a pretty good show at Vintage Motorcycle Days in Ohio, and then also a real nice show at the Barber Vintage Festival down in Alabama. So we just went to that a few weeks ago. Another great time down there. This bike, it's got the points are gone. It's got a electronic ignition on it, as you can see from the wires coming out of the points housing. Not sure what brand it is, but it looks like kind of probably a period setup, maybe from the 70s or 80s. It doesn't look like a newer, but it works. So we left that on there. We did go through the carbs. We rebuilt all those. We used the Randax rebuild kit. He's got pretty much the most comprehensive GL1000 carb rebuild set out there, so we like using his kits on these GL1000s. A little bit of polishing. We didn't go overboard on the polishing, but we cleaned them up a little bit, get rid of a little oxidation there. Timing belts. A lot of times, you get these bikes and they've still got their original timing belts. That's one of the things everybody asks about is, did you replace the timing belts? So this one we did not replace the timing belts. We pulled the covers off. We checked the cam timing. The belts looked almost new to us. They had Napa part numbers on them, which is also on Randax website. He'll tell you the equivalent Napa part number for those cam belts. So don't know exactly how old they are, but they look like they were in really good shape. So check the cam timing on those. Like I said, we rebuilt the carbs, set the ignition timing, got the carbs all synced in, and she runs really nice. So still its original exhaust system. The 77s have the little chrome covers here on your header pipes, and the 75s do not have those, and I'm not sure on the 76s if they have those or not. But the mufflers, I believe, are the same throughout all 3 years. Those are getting hard to come by too. If those are, a lot of times they're rotted out, or the ends are getting holes in them. But yeah, this is a nice muffler set. It's in great shape. No rot or holes or anything that we've seen. Nice chrome still on it. Probably a lot of that has to do with the mileage on the bike. It's only got, as you can see, 13,841. So even though it was set up as a tour, obviously they didn't take it across the country. One of the things we're still looking for, if anybody knows of any of these, we'd be happy to buy it from you, is of course when they put the rear sissy bar luggage racks, they take the original grab bar, throw that up in the attic. So those are near impossible to find. So still looking for one of those. Yeah, because originally the grab bar would have come around, you know, up through here, and then your rear signals would have mounted, you know, in this area here off the grab bar. When they did the sissy bar thing, the turn signals were relocated back here to the tail light bracket. It's not actually original, but they did a clean installation and it looks pretty good. So until we find a grab bar for this one, or until it finds a new home, that's where the signals are now. Speaking of the turn signals, it's still got its original turn signal beeper, and it's works good and very loud. In fact, if I was going to ride it much, I would probably unplug it, because pull up to an intersection and flip your turn signal on and the beeper just echoes across the whole intersection. So you would definitely not forget to turn your signals off when after you made your turn. Nice chrome horn, that works good. The bars, got your. I'm guessing these are the original. I know it's the correct style grip for the GL1000, and they look original to me. So I don't believe they've been replaced. I think those are correct. Gauges, as typical on your tachometer. Originally that would have been a lot redder. Other than the restored ones, I've never seen one that wasn't faded like that. So I imagine they faded after about 5 or 10 years, and that's the way all of them look now, unless you have your gauges restored. So. We did put all fresh fluids in the bike, including the antifreeze, engine oil and filter, flushed the brake systems front and back, new fluid there. Front forks were rebuilt with new fork seals, new tires front and rear. New battery, of course. Well, one other thing I thought was neat about it is a lot of times you get these and people have replaced, you know, ignition switches and tank locks and all kinds of stuff over the years, so you've got a mismatch of keys. So one of the things about having a nice low mileage bike is there's actually one key that does everything. It fits it all. It fits the ignition, fits that, and that might be actually on the GL1000. Might be your only two, because there's no seat lock. The seats are bolted down. Yeah, it might be actually. It might be the only two places that use the key on the GL1000. But anyway, so the neat thing is, you know, the gas tank is actually down here underneath the seat. And what looks like the gas tank is actually just a kind of a cover for the air cleaner, and got a little tray for your tools. There is your gas filler. You can fill that up right there. And there's this little tray here. Pop that out. And there's your air cleaner down in there. And in this tray here, we've got the original toolkit, the case for it. It's not in the best shape, so we put it in this little baggie here. It does have it. These little things here are pretty interesting. We've got little knobs. Take these off. Screw that out, and then this folds down. It's hinged. And there's all your electricals, voltage regulator, fuse box, all kinds of stuff in there, relays, connectors. And then on the other side, does the same thing. That one hinges down, and there's your coolant overflow tank. And one real neat thing is the backup kickstarter. Yep, you can kickstart these bikes. Then they're almost always missing when you get a GL1000. So what you do is you take this kickstarter out, and there's a little socket over here, right down here on the side of the motor. Pull back in here, and there's a rubber plug. You pull this little plug out, and you stick your kicker in there, and it kicks sideways, kind of like an old BMW. So if your battery's a little low and you still got your points ignition, it probably wouldn't work too well with the electronic. I don't know. Most of these electronic ignitions are kind of voltage sensitive. They want that full 12 volts. So. But it's there. We got the kicker. One thing I do see that we're missing is there would have originally been a little wire strap right here that would catch and hold this. Hold this about right here so it doesn't just fall down. So we could probably need to make something up for that. So there's that. Let me put that back together. Kind of tough to do one-handed. Come around to this one. The tray, it's just got the little notches there that sit right on the knobs, just like that, and all back together. All right, see if there's anything else I can tell you about it before we start it up. Can't think of anything. If anybody has any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I usually check those out a couple times a week. Yeah, I'll show the bike. It was built in February of '77. So. Okay, let's start it up. So you turn your key, you get your oil pressure light because they're not running, of course, and your neutral light. We're in neutral. So then we'll come over here. It's probably warmed up still a little bit. I got back about 45 minutes ago from my ride, so we'll try it with the choke off and no throttle. Just hit the starter button. There we go. We'll give it just a little gas here. As with most of the 70s and 80s bikes, they're a little cold-blooded because they're that was when the EPA was starting to get a hold of things, so they made them, jet them a little leaner. Plus, they had a little better fuel back then. So the fuel that we're running nowadays, seems like all these old bikes will run a little bit better if you take your jet sizes, especially on these GL1000s. If you increase your main jets and your pilot's jets by just one size, it seems to make a world difference on how well they run. As you can probably see, the tachometer is just a little slow to respond. I've seen that on some of the older ones. I don't know exactly what the cause of that is inside. It works, but it's just slow. So as you can see, if I rev it, not much happens, but if I rev it, hold it, that tach. If you give it about 5 seconds, it gets there. Alright, so let's show you that fancy turn signal beeper. Listen to this. Isn't that fun? Alright, the right side. And of course your light on the dash. I have found on those beepers too, the more you know, they don't get used. You know, of course, the bike's with 13,000 miles. It's obviously done a lot of sitting over the years. So, of course, the beeper hasn't been used much over the years, so it kind of has a sick sound to it. But the more you use them, the more it kind of clears its throat. But it always still has that real high-pitched sound to it. So let's see your horn. Nice, nice toned horn. Almost sounds like a car horn, a period car horn. Let's see, headlight. There's your low beam. So we go to high beam here. You get a little indicator here. It's kind of dim because it's made for nighttime, so you don't see it much in the day. But there's high beam. Tail light, of course, we're in the era where you can't shut the headlight and tail light off. It's always on. I think they did that after 74, 75, something like that. It was a US DOT thing. See your foot brake light. And the handbrake. So all your lights, switches and gauges are working. Holds a real nice idle. Runs down the road real good. These GL1000s, you know, for classic motorcycle, they were the big bike back then. So plenty of power. As with any vintage bike, though, you had period brakes. Kind of wanted, even though they are top of the line for that era. You've got dual discs in the front, single disc in the rear, but it's still nothing like a modern motorcycle. You kind of want to plan your stops. Hopefully you don't have to do too many emergency stops. Go ahead and shut her off here. And as you can see, temperature, like I said, it has been run a little bit ago, so that's why the temperature's already up. But you got that kind of middle range there where the line gets bigger. That's your normal operating range. And then after it heats up a little while, you've got a electric fan down there that kicks on via a thermostat. Fan does work. In fact, when I got back from my ride, that was starting to run a little bit. So, feel that. Oh, and then you've got a fuel gauge here. It just has a float inside the tank. And that seems to work pretty good too. Well, I think that's about all I can think to tell you about this one. Like I said, we don't know for sure if this one's going to be for sale or not just yet. We'll see how that goes. But it's 1977 Honda GL1000 Goldwing. So, in pretty much original condition. So. All right, well, be sure to check us out on Facebook. Our website's williamsvintagecycle.com. We do a lot with the vintage Japanese motorcycles. We also sell a lot of just everyday 10 and 20-year-old cruisers, Harleys. We are a Royal Enfield dealer, so if you're in the market for a brand new Royal Enfield, give us a call. And we'll see you later. Thanks.